What are we going to eat tomorrow? To what extent should the EU take a close look at what is on our plates? Apart from the debate on GM foods and organic farming, what is the vision of the future for agriculture on our continent? To answer your questions on iTalk now, Dacian Ciolos, European Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Development. Mr. Ciolos, welcome to the programme. How do I pronounce your name?
Hello, yes, that's fine.
Who's Romanian? So quick questions and rapid answers. Let's start with the first question on iTalk.
Hello, my name's Josephine and I'm Belgian. I have a question. I've heard of the CAP, Common Agricultural Policy. I know they get a lot of money from the EU, especially for a dozen or so large companies, but I'd like to know what it does for small farmers.
The CAP is 40% of the budget of the European Union, 56 billion euros. That's right?
Yes, it's just under 40% of the EU budget. It may seem high for Europe, but on a national level, it is very low. This was the first policy of the EU, remains the only economic policy that has been completely rolled out across the community. That is to say that member states have decided their entire national budget for agriculture, and they decide together how this money is used. So, money actually goes to farmers, not to enterprises. Small farmers receive a lot, and with the reform that is being proposed, they will receive even more. It provides a very simple and direct scheme for small farmers to work.
The CAP is still very controversial, especially for countries that do not have much money for their farmers.
The CAP is a subject that is often discussed because, as I said, it's the only subject where we really have a unified economic policy. In fact, this year we celebrate 50 years. Reform of the Common Agricultural Policy is to adapt it regularly to people's expectations and to current situations.
Another question for Mr. Ciolos.
My name's Stephanie George. I'm Belgian. I'd like to know, what's the future of agriculture in Europe? Will sustainable development be part of your policy? It interests me personally, and I believe it's also of interest to many young people. Thanks very much.
That's a big question.
Absolutely. This is the heart of the reform that we are preparing for the policy. So the future of European agriculture is both in the agricultural food production, which is sustainable, and in the proper management of natural resources.
What do you mean by production? Production methods?
Producing food to feed Europeans, as we are doing at the moment, but also food for export. The EU mainly exports high-quality products. It still remains a big issue to produce food in a world where demand is much greater than supply. But agriculture in Europe plays an increasing role in the management of natural resources, land, soil, water, biodiversity, and also a balanced development of rural areas, because agriculture is still an essential business in rural Europe.
Another question for iTalk.
Hello, Mr. Ciolos. My name is Marie Dugeur. I'm Belgian. I want to know if, where it says on products there's no GM content or that it's organic, it is what it says on the label. Can we be sure it's GM-free or that it's organic? Thank you.
Can the European Union reassure us about the food that we put on our plates?
Absolutely. The Common Agricultural Policy is responsible for production methods. My colleague John Daly's portfolio is to deal only with security and food safety. We have a system for monitoring, control and traceability. It is a control device which operates separately from the administration that deals with agricultural production. That way we can ensure there is no conflict of interest.
And doesn't that cost more?
No, because you can't put a price on the health of our citizens, and that is essential. And it is equally important for European agriculture to produce high-quality, healthy produce in a sustainable manner. That is the objective that the Commission has for the future Common Agricultural Policy.
Another question for iTalk.
My name is Sandra Isabel Moreno and I'm Spanish. Why at this time of crisis do we see farmers dumping their produce because they disagree with European policies?
This is happening less and less. If you may remember, that was 10 or 15 years ago when we had many more problems to do with overproduction. Today we are dealing with crisis much more efficiently.
Why is there still overproduction in a world where there is famine? Why?
There really is no systematic overproduction. There are situations where the consumer demand drops for various reasons. That happened with milk in 2009. A farmer plans his production 10 to 15 years in advance. He cannot always adapt immediately and make changes to production on demand. That is why a common agricultural policy must exist, so it can try and balance supply and demand. The markets need to be well supplied for the consumer. The farmer also needs a constant income to live and invest in his business.
Quick questions, rapid responses. That's always the way on iTalk. Next question.
My name is Ariane Wilhelms. I'm Belgian. Mr. Ciolos, what will the EU do about the issue of farmland? We all know the world population is increasing, arable lands are shrinking. So how will we feed ourselves in decades to come, in future centuries? Does Europe have an answer to this question?
Your view?
Yes. First of all, the arable land in the EU should support agriculture, a means of production to provide food for its citizens to live. The land, biodiversity, the quality of water and soil depend on its sustainability. The CAP promotes the most sustainable methods possible. At the same time, the policy must also allow other countries outside the EU, and I'm thinking particularly about Africa, Asia, South America, to use their resources, because if we want to feed the world, this will not just be done by agriculture in Europe.
du Sud à utiliser leurs ressources parce que si on veut nourrir la planète, ça ne sera pas seulement avec les terres européennes.
Are you saying Europe is setting an example?
Not necessarily that, but it is necessary that the decisions taken in Europe do not have a negative effect on the possibility of other countries having their own agricultural policy.
Last question on agriculture on iTalk today.
Buongiorno, mi chiamo Barbara, sono italiana. Vorrei sapere che
Hello, my name is Barbara. I'm Italian. I want to know what the EU does with all the food surplus when there's a problem of world hunger and, for example, starvation in developing countries. Thank you.
You have already said that there is less overproduction than before.
We can't talk about systematic agricultural surplus anymore in the EU. The CAP has changed since the year 2000.
Even if it is not systematic, it still happens. What foods are overproduced?
It exists because there are variations, but it depends. It could be certain vegetables one year, another year it could be milk. But what is clear now is that the demand for food is much greater than supply. So we need to ensure that there is consistency with supply to the markets and also a consistency of farmers' incomes so they can be encouraged to remain in production. This is the risk in Europe, not the surplus in the future, but that we will be left without farmers to continue their work, which is both beautiful but difficult.
So look into your crystal ball. What will the CAP be like in 10, 20, 30 years?
The CAP has to be a public policy that helps farmers to produce quality food by sustainable use of natural resources. The CAP must be a policy that will reassure consumers about the quality and quantity of food that is in the market.
That's a large program. I hope you get there. Dacian Ciolos, thank you for being our guest. See you soon here in the European Parliament for another iTalk.
À bientôt.